Here at Railroads University, it's always important that we begin our presentations with an acknowledgement of the traditional lands. Royal Roads University rests upon the traditional lands of the Esquimalt and Songhees families, the Kusepsum and the Kwangin, ancestors and families who have lived here for thousands of generations. It's with great gratitude that we live, learn, work, and play on these beautiful lands. So we are here today to chat about our graduate certificate in transforming child protection to well-being. My name is Selena Kunar, and I'm an education advisor here at Railroads University, and joined by some wonderful folks who are going to tell us much more about the program and how we can all go about getting connected to it. Starting with Dr. Kathleen Mannion. Dr. Mannion is an associate professor and the lead part of our curriculum committee chair, Transforming Child Protection to Well-Being. Thank you so much for being here, Kathleen.
Thank you so much. It's wonderful to be here. I'm very excited, sorry, to tell you about this program. I did just want to pop in and say that I personally am sitting here in my virtual campus because we can't, of course, be on campus at the moment. But I am situated on the lands of the Algonquin people myself, and I'm very excited to look out my window and see the ocean, and I did just see that a lovely river otter just went by my window, and I think that's just such a beautiful way to welcome the webinar today, particularly if we think about the rich space that we're actually in here in Victoria. I saw this morning in our local newspaper, the Times Colonist, that the Algonquin people are getting ready to launch a tourism initiative that is going to share the wonderful wealth of rich heritage on our coastal land, which will go from more central Victoria all the way out to the Royal Roads campus. So I also thought, again, that's a beautiful way to start today. I will share a little bit about myself later, but I'll pass this back over to you, Selena.
Thank you so much, Kathleen, and for sharing that with us. That's so exciting. You've learned a little bit about us, and we are even more excited to learn a little bit about all of you. So if you feel comfortable, let's take that chat box for a spin. Let us know where you're joining us from and perhaps the traditional lands that you're currently located. Also, if you feel up for it, let us know, what are you hoping to get out of today's session? What questions do you have? This will help us get an idea of what we should be sharing with you today to make sure your time is used well. It's also interesting to know what sectors folks are coming from. So if you'd like to pop that in the chat box, that's a really neat way to learn about all the diverse backgrounds that come together for a program like this. So while the introductions and information is coming into the chat box, let's take a swing through how we're going to spend the rest of our hour together today. So next, we're going to move on to a short exploration of the Royal Roads University experience, talk about the program itself, of course, and cap off the formal presentation with the application process and walkthrough of requirements. And of course, we'll leave time for questions and conversation at the end of the session. But please, as we're moving along today, feel free to pop questions in our chat box as they come up for you. So taking a look on my second monitor to our chat box, we have Nicole joining us from the traditional lands of the Kusepsum and Lekwungen ancestors and families, so close to campus in the Lagoon neighborhood of Colwood, currently taking the MAGLE program, our MA in Global Leadership, and excited to have been accepted to take one course from this program as an elective. Oh, so cool, Nicole. Thanks for sharing that. We have Alana, also situated on the unceded lands of the Lekwungen people. Alana is part of our international team. So she is here to help support, answer any questions around admission requirements for international students. Thank you so much for being here, Alana. We have Melanie. I'm a child protection social worker in Port Hardy. I gratefully and respectfully acknowledge the Kwakitlu, and I apologize for my pronunciation, Kwasala Nakwaksta, Kwatsinu, and Namgis people whose traditional and ancestral territories I work on. I am a graduate of the MA Global Leadership from RIU in 2019. Oh, how exciting. Thank you so much for being here, Melanie. We have Elena, who works for the Alliance for Child Protection and Human in Action, who is based in Rome. So all this talk about global leadership, and we have a global webinar. Very cool. Thanks so much for being out here, Elena. Interested in learning more about the program and if it could be of interest for child protection and humanitarian action practitioners. Well, why don't we jump right in? Let's start talking about rural roads, and then we can talk about the program itself, because that is a great question. So to begin, we like to talk about some of the things we value here at Railroads, and that starts with all of you. We're really proud here at Railroads that we have an approach called first names first. So that means you are not a number, you are you are your name. Right off the bat, you'll notice that folks like Alana from our enrollment teams, myself, part of our recruitment teams, all the way to the support team. So Colleen, she's the manager of the School of Humanitarian Studies, to Kathleen and her teaching teams. We are all eager to know who you are, why you're here, what are you hoping to get out of Railroads to make sure that your experience is tailored truly to you. And we can't do that without starting by learning your name. Next on our list, we have our real world classrooms. Here at Railroads, there's no divide between out there and in here, between theory and practice. We're so fortunate to have our classrooms led by what we call scholar practitioners. So our faculty are not only academic experts in their field, but they're also out in the world, putting into practice what they bring into our classrooms. Speaking of classrooms, you have some folks in there that you end up building relationships with forever, your cohort members. So here at Railroads, many of our programs subscribe to the cohort learning model, which means you begin your program with your carefully selected group of learners, and you actually move through the program together all the way to convocation. That serves many purposes. From having a core group of learners, you get to dive into your work together and build these strong supportive networks, but also creating this really diverse professional network upon graduation as well. It's always so exciting when I get to meet alumni who years later are still sharing that their WhatsApp groups, their Facebook messages, they're still alive with their cohort chatting, and folks are, when able, are getting together to meet in their respective cities and traveling around. It's so wonderful to see these lifelong relationships that are made with your cohort members. And finally, life is also an education. We'll talk a little bit more about this in our application process, but here at Railroads, we are interested in more than just your transcript. As mentioned, we are interested in you and all of you. So that means your academic background, your professional background, your personal background, all the things that have come together to make you you. That's what we want to know about. And again, we'll talk about that a little bit more as we get to the application process. I just want to swing to our chat box one more time. I can see it from the corner of my eye growing, which is so exciting. We have Shanti Baker here, Soar Optimist International, Arts Embassy International. Thank you for being here. Colleen, the manager for the School of Humanitarian Studies. So wonderful. We have Melanie, who shares that the cohort is still close and we talked often as we can. Oh, that's heartwarming, Melanie. Thanks so much for sharing that. So please continue to pop comments, questions in the chat box. Share more about who you are. It's so wonderful to be able to get a sense of who's in this virtual room with us today. So talking a little bit about Railroads and the space that we occupy, here's a quick snapshot of Railroads University. We're very lucky that here in Victoria, BC, the weather's quite mild. So these pictures really are a pretty fair representation of what our campus looks like year round. So starting at the top left here, you see Hadley Castle. This is definitely our most famous building. And you may recognize it as its claim to fame is being a part of movies such as the X-Men franchise, Deadpool, and a few Disney things as well. Right beside our gardens, right beside our castle, we have beautiful curated gardens. So here you see a picture of our Japanese garden, and these gardens are well loved by not only our staff, faculty, and students, but the greater community as well. A stone's throw away from our beautiful gardens is the Esquimalt Lagoon. The lagoon is actually a registered bird sanctuary, so there are always little critters down there to keep you company. And finally, this last photo here, we wanted to depict online learning. Here at Royal Roads, we have been working in the space of online learning for over 25 years. When COVID-19 hit, we were very well poised, both with our pedagogy as well as our technological capacity to make sure that all of our learners, staff, faculty, anyone who's associated with Royal Roads was able to very seamlessly move their work online and continue with these extraordinary learning spaces. It's important to us to note that the power of our place is not only this beautiful physical campus, but our virtual location as well. And we'll talk a little bit more about what online learning looks like in this program right now. So I'll turn the microphone over to you, Kathleen.
Great, thank you so much. So I said I'd come back a little bit to talk about myself, not my favorite subject, but there you go. My name is Kathleen Mannion. I am an associate professor at Royal Roads University. I largely work within the Justice Studies program, and that's where I've been working for getting on to 8 years with the university. But my background and my heart is really in systems that support children to thrive. So I'm really excited to be able to launch this new program that's really exploring child protection, but moving into more of a focus on child well-being. So Selena, if you want to move to the next slide, that'd be great. So to give you a little bit of a sense of what we're looking at in this program, this is a graduate certificate. So this is 3 courses, 3 credit courses, but we are hoping that we could build this out in the future into a graduate diploma and into a master's degree as we move forward. But we want to make sure that there's interest in this. But the idea behind this is really about looking at what are the systems that we currently have that support children and young people to be their best, find out where there are gaps, find out where we've gone wrong, and explore how we can move into a more holistic vision of how we support children and young people, looking more at their well-being. One of our instructors shared this vision recently with me. Alex Kruger said that we are hoping to dare to imagine a different system that recognizes child well-being. And I think that really encapsulates what we're trying to do here. So through the program, we're looking at using strength-based and outcomes-based concepts of well-being. That's not new, that's common in a lot of child protection. So that's one of the elements that we're definitely incorporating into the design of the program. We're also looking at critical perspectives on child protection and child and family focused program to give us a sense of where have we gone right with this and where might we be able to actually push this into a new space that is more supportive of children, their families within their communities. We also want to draw on the theoretical knowledge that we have that is rich, particularly in the last 4 or 5 decades. So incorporating that into what we're doing, but also drawing on the practical experiences of people who are working in the field, which is why Royal Roads is a good match for this kind of a program, because we do focus on scholar practitioners leading the education journey. But we want to draw on those areas of child protection, child and family welfare, all that we know about child development and what we know about child rights, and bring that into deep and rich discussions together to explore how we can bring child well-being to the fore. The other thing that's unique or special about this program is we're focused on both the international arena as well as local knowledge and capacities. So we have a team of instructors and course designers who have a lot of experience at the international level, working across many, many different countries and in different ways at the national and at the local level. So we really want to bring that into the space, but also draw on the knowledge and wisdom of the students who are actually in the classroom to really bring dialogue to the fore about how we can transform child protection to well-being. To do this, we want to bring in a systems perspective on how we can promote child well-being. So that's the overarching sense of the graduate certificate. Yes, please, thank you. Thank you, Selena. So we are in this program also unique because we are working in partnerships. It's not just the Royal Roads University that's developing this. We're doing this in partnership with 2 international non-governmental organizations who've been working in this field for decades. So the International Institute for Child Rights and Development is based here in Canada, but it works across all of the continents and has a lot of experience and knowledge around particularly child participation and child rights. Child Frontiers is another well-known and respected organization founded, I believe, in Thailand, but also has chapters around the world and really has a lot of experience and knowledge in program evaluation and research, but also in supporting child-focused policies. So together we have created this graduate certificate and really excited to bring this to the fore in this coming fall. Next slide, please. So I wanted to really quickly look at the learning outcomes framework. So at Royal Roads University, we draw on a learning outcomes framework where we're setting out what we intend to ensure our students are learning and work towards bringing in processes to ensure that they are illustrating those learning outcomes. Now, we've drawn liberally from the UNESCO framework for education here of learning to know, to do, to be, to live together, which I particularly love, and to transform self and society. And with that framework, we're really looking at again, as I've mentioned, the theoretical concepts and knowledge about child well-being, what we know and how we can get there. We will explore how you actually do research and how you bring in effective communication when you're working with not only children and youth, but their families and their communities. We also want to make sure that we are looking at learning to be. So a lot of the work that we'll be doing is on self-awareness and turning internally to explore what's going on for me as an individual and how can I be of service and how does that translate into the collaboration work that I do and how do I connect with others. Learning to live together is quite important within the Royal Roads model. Again, we have a cohort model, which Selena shared with you, but we also do quite a bit of work within teamwork. So we spend some time thinking about how do you have effective teams and how do you work effectively together. And that also explores the concept of collaborative leadership, how we value diversity and work across cultures and explore how we are connected to one another and we have interdependence. And finally, learning to transform self and societies really brings in those concepts of system thinking, how we have inquiry, how we frame problems is a really important issue and how we frame strengths, but also how we can build on our creative capacities to ensure effective ways of moving forward with the children, youth, families, and communities that we work with in various parts of the world. Next slide, please. So a little bit about the structure of the program. As I said, this is a 3-course graduate certificate. Having said that, there are 2 additional courses, non-credit courses that are built into the beginning of the program just to support your learning. The first one is Introduction to Academic Integrity, and the second one is Foundations for Success. These are non-academic courses, and they're built in 2 weeks long. They're built into the program to support your success in the program. So if you haven't been in school for some time, or if it's your first time to online learning, these will support you to do this. They also give you an induction to the Royal Roads model. Now, the 3 credit courses, which are 3 credits each, start with foundations. So the first course looks at reframing child well-being in a complex global reality. So this is an online course, and it will always be an online course. The idea here is to really start with our definitions. What are we talking about when we talk about child well-being? What do we know about child protection and child development? And how can we use that to move ourselves forward in thinking? The second course builds on that. This one's more focused on practice. It's entitled Understanding, Assessing, and Promoting Children's Wellbeing in Context Through Case Studies. So this draws on case studies to help unpack some of the practices that we can use and can promote to support child wellbeing in more effective ways. The final course is a more practical course. Tools and approaches for change. So this is really drawing on a range of tools that we can use to support change making that we are doing with children, youth, families, communities, and even nations. Now, this one at the moment is built to be adaptable. Whereas the other 2 courses will always be online, this third course, because it's more pragmatic and practical, we are hoping that we will be able to do this in person at some point. So this first running of the course, the program, this course will be virtual given COVID-19 restraints, although we anticipate the university will likely be back on campus by the time this course is running next spring. However, not all of the students who are there may be in countries that can travel. So for this first running, we will have this as a virtual course. In the future, we're hoping that what we will be doing is having a blended model. So these courses are all 9 weeks long. The 504 course has a 2 weeks residency or intensive learning. And for this first year, while it's online, that intensive learning will be virtual, but in the subsequent running, we're hoping that that will be within campus. So online for 2 weeks. In the future, we're looking at options to have that run in different geographical locations around the world that would be most convenient to our students. The first course starts in September of this coming year. And the foundation with the 2 weeks non-credit course. And October 4th is the time that the 500 course starts. These in total take about 9 months to complete, and that's your graduate certificate program. Next slide. Who did we tailor this to? Who would benefit from the program? A whole range of people. Largely, it's people interested in supporting children and young people. We designed this with professionals in mind who are working in child protection or child and family welfare, or are working with child rights. These might be educators, or they might be social workers, or they could be people working within the international, national, or local non-governmental organizations, people who are working for the United Nations, for instance, policymakers who work with policies focused on children and young people, social workers, child rights advocates, other frontline workers, government workers, researchers who focus in this area, or other child and youth care workers. And I think there's one more slide. No. So I see there's a whole range of questions which I wasn't following. Thank you, Selena, for putting up the contact details of the 2 organizations who are working with this program. Melanie's asked, would I have to take these again? As I missed when this question came, I assume this is for the academic integrity course. If you've already taken it, no, you wouldn't need to do this. We will get to a little bit more about how to apply as we're moving forward here. And that's all the questions. Okay, super. Thank you. Selena, I turn it back to you.
Thank you so much, Kathleen. Wow, that was a lot of information to come your way. This is a brand new certificate here at Railroad, so this is a wonderful space to ask some questions that might have come up for you. We're going to take a cruise through the application requirements, as well as the admissions into this program, and then we'll move over to our question and answer. So while we're exploring some of the finer details of the application process, please pop your questions in the chat box and we'll get to them shortly. So to kick off, we like to share admissions into this program. Here at Railroads, we have two admission pathways, the first being standard admissions and the second flexible admissions. So for standard admissions, we require a 4-year or comparable undergraduate degree in a relevant and related field with a minimum GPA of a B+ from a recognized post-secondary institution, as well as at least 2 years of relevant work in some capacity with children, preferably at the leadership or management level. And then a note here that a personal statement addressing how you will consider your academic education to be relevant and related is expected. And we'll talk a little bit more about the personal statement in a few slides here. So flexible admissions. Flexible admissions is where we get to showcase that we really care about all of you. So flexible admissions is for those folks who may not satisfy the standard admissions, but understand that this program can provide you with so much, and you can provide this program with so much. The power in programs like this not only comes from our amazing teaching teams, but the cohort itself. So it's really important to us that in our learning spaces, we have a variety of people from a variety of backgrounds with a variety of experiences. So you can be considered for flexible admissions to this program under the following circumstances. So if you meet the degree requirement, but not the GPA requirement, you'll be required to have a minimum of 5 years of relevant professional experience. If you don't have an undergraduate degree, you will normally require 10 years of work experience with a minimum of 2 years of relevant professional experience in a leadership or management position or an equivalent combination of education and experience. Again, in your personal statement, you'll need to tell us how your work experience meets the requirements of these programs. And at the bottom here, if you're coming in through flexible admissions, you will also be required to take academic writing and critical thinking before the program begins and obtain a minimum of a B+. The academic writing and critical thinking course is well loved on our campus. We have offerings almost every month, if not maybe a few times a month, because many of our learners, whether coming through flexible admissions or standard admissions, enjoy the opportunity to dive back in to academic writing and critical thinking before starting the program. It gives you a great foundation to think back to, okay, APA, citing, all of these things that you might be a little further away from your last time that you did this type of writing. So academic writing and critical thinking, well loved, lots of opportunities to get that done before the program starts. If you have any questions, you can always pop them in the chat box or connect with our admissions and enrollment teams to learn more. We'll also note that flexible admissions is assessed on a case-by-case basis. So if you have any questions about what flexible admissions could mean for you based on your background and your wealth of expertise, again, connect with us. We're always open and eager to have these sort of conversations. So how exactly do you go about applying? Well, it starts with an online application, and that application comes with a fee of $126.28. Once that online application is in, You then get opened up a portal where you can start submitting some supporting documents. So some supporting documents include things like official transcripts, official meaning that they do need to arrive at our institution sealed, though in these COVID times, institutions are moving through how they send around official transcripts differently. So make sure to connect with your sending institution to see how they're moving through that at this time. As mentioned, your personal statement, a structured resume, and then 2 letters of reference. Our website is a wonderful resource for moving through this step of the process. So if you take a peek at our website, it'll give you some tips, tricks, and guidelines as to what sort of questions should you be answering in your personal statement. What categories do you want to make sure are highlighted in your structured resume? And the more practical things like, oh, okay, how many pages should this be? Should this look like? So take a cruise to our website. It'll also tell you things like how you can submit your official transcripts and who your referees should be and how they can get their letters to us. But know that our teams are always here to help. So in a few slides, we have our contact information for our teams you can connect with to also help get your questions answered about your supporting documents. So moving into upcoming intakes, as Kathleen mentioned, this program begins September 20th, 2021. We are so excited to be in launch year for this program. So that puts its application deadline at June 20th, 2021. If you're looking a little bit further out, we do have our 2022 date posted as well. So the program will begin September 26th, 2022, putting its application deadline at June 26th, 2022. We had a lot of questions about financial aid, so we wanted to share this slide to make sure we can get you connected with our financial aids and awards specialists who have their fingertips on all sorts of internal and external resources to help with financial planning. So our financial aid and awards specialists can help answer questions about things like loans, awards, research scholarships, and other types of funding as well. So on the slide here, you can see their website as well as their direct phone lines as well. So if you have any questions about financial aid, scholarships, bursaries, anything like that, please connect with our financial aid office as there are the right people to help you out. And speaking of people who can help you out, our enrollment services team. So in our chat box, you've got a quick intro to who they are and some of the questions they can help answer. So online, we have Alana from our international team. We have Bev from our domestic enrollment team. They're just beautiful representations of who we have on our campus who are eager to help you out. So if you're located domestically, you can connect with Bev and her team at learn.more@rollroads.ca. And if you're joining us internationally, Alana and her team would be more than happy to continue the conversation at learn.more.international@rollroads.ca. And I see the chat box moving from the corner of my eye. So I'm going to take a swing over and see if there's any questions or comments that came up in relation to the application process. So let's scroll up. We have Alana popping in links. Oh, thanks so much, Alana, for our flexible admissions. A link here to tell you a little bit more about academic writing and critical thinking. We have Nicole sharing that they loved academic writing and critical thinking. Thanks so much, Nicole. Alana shared where you can go to apply. Where can you start this application process to get that submission portal open? A link for some document submission guidelines. Bev shared details on the application requirements. Oh, Melanie, you had a great question. Couldn't find the exact tuition for this program online. Is it available? We'll pause on that real quick. We're just around the corner from our question and conversation, and we'll start off with that one. Thanks for asking, Melanie. We have Alana sharing about the financial aid and awards page. Thank you so much. Sharing the information for our advisors. So when this slide is gone, you still have the information here and how you can connect with Alana and Bev's teams. some more links here about domestic and international tuition. And I see Bev has answered Melanie's question. So why don't we use that as a great opportunity to wrap up our formal part of our presentation. A big thank you to you all. And let's get this presentation down and dive into our chat box and some questions that may come up. Okay. So we had a question from Melanie about the exact tuition for this program. Bev had shared that RRU tuition amounts for all programs beginning after August 31st, 2021 have not yet been approved, but we estimate this graduate certificate cost based on current year tuition at about $6,793 for domestic students and about $8,503 for international students. So thanks so much for sharing that, Bev. So I'll give a pause for folks to add any questions that may have come up for you in our chat box. Kathleen, one question that comes up a lot, and I'm not sure if you're going to be able to answer this quite yet, but do you know how many hours per week or how much time someone should set aside if they're thinking about pursuing this program?
It's a great question, Selena, and it's true. People do ask that all the time. I think within the Canadian context, what we estimate is that 1 credit should be equivalent to 33 hours. So as each of these courses are 3 credit courses, we are looking at 99 hours of student effort. We're looking at a program that has courses that are non-weeks long. So we are looking at least 10 hours per week that we're expecting students to put into this. And that includes doing your readings, doing the activities that you'll find online, attending sessions that are live, but also doing your assignments. We actually find you probably need a little bit more than that. So keeping a loose guide of 10 to 15 hours is a good estimate for how you move forward. And Elena, I see that you're just responding to that, so that's great. I wanted to come back to something that you had said earlier in your introduction, that you're wondering whether this is a relevant program for people in humanitarian settings. And I did want to come back to that because I think it does raise a really important question about what context, because we have children everywhere in every kind of setting. And I think that what we're looking at in terms of this program is exploring a lot of those settings, but particularly where we do see more challenges. And the humanitarian context is one we are definitely looking at. So we will be looking at case studies that are including humanitarian studies. We will be exploring work with refugee populations within refugee camps. We will be looking at examples of other war-torn settings or disaster-based settings, but also looking within other local contexts, within the Canadian context, for instance. So at the moment, we're ensuring that we are being able to draw on the incredible amount of wisdom we have within the Canadian context of working with Indigenous populations and recognizing the harm that the child protection system has done to our Indigenous populations, and finding ways that we can draw lessons from that in how we work within a Canadian context, or whether we're working within an African, Latin American, Asian, or European context.
We have a few questions from Zoom Health, Kathleen. So we have a question asking, is this course appropriate for wanting to move from frontline work into planning, policy, and child advocacy?
Great set of questions. Thank you for Zoom Health. Yes, absolutely. I think that will be really useful. If you're working in the front line, it would be fantastic for you to be able to bring your knowledge and experience into this setting, but also to be able to hear what that looks like from more of a planning or policy perspective, or looking at advocacy. But similarly, if you're working in planning, policy, or advocacy, moving more into a frontline setting, it could also work that way. So that's really useful. I see you've asked a second question about whether there'll be small groups for students working more closely with each other. And yes, that's how Royal Roads works. We do have a range of ways of working. We will have a lot of assignments that are individual, and there'll be work for you to do at your own pace, which gets to Elena's question after this. But we also put you in small groups so that you can work more intensely with a group of people to support your learning. We find that there's so much knowledge that you can gain from your peers, but also the questions that you ask one another really help ground the learning that you do. So yes, it will be both individual work, teamwork, but also cohort work. And that draws into Elena's question about whether this is synchronous or if you're doing this at your own pace. There will be a range of both of those. So in the first year, all 3 courses are virtual or online, but it will be a combination of material that you can do at your own pace to a degree. So they will be set out in units so that there'll be expectations that within this week, this is the work we're hoping you can do when it makes sense to you, but it will be defined by specific points in time. At the same time, there will be points in time where we hope that you could meet together at the same time. We anticipate that this program is going to draw on students from a range of different countries. So this is a little bit more complex for us in terms of the planning, working across time zones. We do have some experience in doing that. So again, there's a little bit of a flexibility in how we'll manage that. We're looking at having multiple times so that we can capture as many time zones as possible, but that's almost down to the individual cohort and where the students are located.
And then another great question from Melanie, is there a limit of how many students you'll be accepting into this program?
Again, another good question. We have a limit of 45 students for a class, so we won't want to go more than that. It's a large class, but it's small enough that we as instructors will be able to maintain the names of all of our students. So that's what that's our cutoff space.
Wonderful. Well, it looks like that has brought us to the end of our question and conversation for today. And I'll emphasize for today, we are never done answering your questions or engaging in conversations about this graduate certificate. Bev has shared a link here in the chat box. For anyone who's looking to get a summary of information about this program, please feel free to click at the link that Bev shared, and it'll get you set up in our database to get that message from Bev and her team. So a big, big thank you to everyone who is joining us and for those who are watching the recording as well. Before we sign off, Kathleen, was there anything else you wanted to share?
I just want to say thank you so much, Selena. As always, you did a beautiful job at navigating us through this process. And thank you to everyone who's joined us, who is watching the video afterwards. I am excited for this program, and I look forward, even just in looking at the chat function and where people are from. I want to dig into a little bit more of a discussion about your background and where you're at. So I look forward to that in the future.
Thank you so much for being here and for talking us through this, Kathleen. It was such an exciting way to start the morning and potentially afternoon or evening for those of you who are watching the recording as well. So we wish you a wonderful rest of your morning, afternoon, or evening, depending when and where you are watching. Goodbye, everyone.